Today, I am joined by a legendary figure in popular culture and somebody whose work we've celebrated many times on the PodSyndicate shows, from early cult classics like The Wraith and Junction, Wild at Heart Ruby of Mice and Men boxing Helena, via her bravura performance in the Elizabeth Taylor story, and of course, memorable television turns in Shameless and as the iconic Audrey Horne in Twin Peaks. I am beyond happy to be joined by Sherilyn Fenn. How are you today, Sherilyn?
I'm really good. Thank you so much. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. On the topic of well-being, let me ask, how's the last year been for you, Sherilyn? I'm always interested to get people's experiences and stories of these interesting times we find ourselves in.
I think we've all just been going through a lot, a kind of a crucifixion of sorts. But, you know, I think at first, I think you go through phases. At first, it was shocking. It was kind of almost not believable. And then there was too much consuming of what was on the television that just got very depressing and confusing. And then at a certain point, I just started to turn the focus on myself and do some needed inner work, and coming out of it now. So it's all okay.
I'm glad to hear it. And I realize that, you know, all of the countries that we find ourselves in, myself coming from the UK, now living in New Zealand, just yourself in the States. I mean, obviously with, you know, the presidency that is the nightmare that's just ended. And all of these other issues, it's been especially difficult. But one of the things I think that we turn to for comfort is, and mindfulness is entertainment. And I'm just wondering, I was surprised doing a little bit of research for today that you come from quite a musical background with your parents and various other family members being in and around the music business. I'm just wondering, was this an influence on your trajectory towards show business in general terms at all?
You know, I used to think not, but as I think about it now, I don't think, I think that when you're exposed to something, it makes it more viable. I don't think that had my aunt not achieved what she achieved, I don't know that I would have looked in that direction as it even being a possibility. And I also, I mean, this is kind of silly, but as a young girl, I remember seeing she had the most beautiful stuff, the most beautiful clothes, you know, that were from London, and the most beautiful things I'd ever seen, you know. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wish I could have stuff like that. So it was just childish things, kind of. But again, I think if you're exposed to something, you know, and your mom's younger sister did it, maybe it seems like maybe you could do it, as opposed to somebody that has nobody in their family that's doing anything like that.
Yeah, I suppose that attainability just seems more viable. It doesn't feel as though you're talking about a whole of the realm or a whole of the world that people can exist within. And I suppose, I mean, here at Pod Syndicate, we're very mindful of championing the sort of the positive side of popular culture. And we talk a lot about with our interviewees about things that they are a fan of. So I'm just wondering, what does Sherilyn Fenn get excited about, whether that be entertainment, art, or culture? What floats your boat?
Well, I've been a seeker for a long time in my life. I'm very spiritual. I have a strong connection with God. I'm always seeking deeper truths. I'm a nonconformist. I don't do what the world is doing because the world is a bit of a mess. So why would I? You know, I kind of find my own way, my own truth about things. You know, so of course that would go with art, or that would go with certain films, or that would go with, you know, like the show Friends, I was not a fan of, and like everybody loved Friends, but I never watched it because I just wasn't my thing, you know. It just didn't move me. I like things that move me. I like things that have depth. I'm not great at sort of small talk, and you know, I have a very small group of friends. I'm what somebody said, you're a mermaid, you dive deep. I'm just always interested in deeper truths and you know, existential questions. And
Has this seeking, this sort of searching, that you are drawn to, and just seems kind of, I suppose, intrinsic part of who you are. Has that guided your career? Has that guided the choices that you've made? I'd imagine that you were getting, for example, a lot of Audrey Light type role offers in particularly the early 90s. Did that guide your decisions in that regard, as far as what you would or wouldn't do?
I don't think, unfortunately, that it did. I think there's a certain, especially when I'm younger, just trying to grab that golden ring, and sometimes doing things that I didn't necessarily like. And being naive enough that I could make them much prettier than they were in my mind and in my heart, and come to find out that that wasn't the same movie the director was making. So it took getting older and getting wiser to and having children to just growing up to be able to see what really is important and learn to stand up for myself and just really not do things just to make some money or because so and so is in it.
Yeah, and I feel that that's become obviously that conversation is very central in popular culture at the moment. And I'm just wondering, if you could just sort of take us back to your early career. Where were you in your career arc when Twin Peaks came along? Where were you sort of placed within the industry at that point?
Oh, I was not considered for much of anything at that point. But David Lynch can see into people's souls, and he, like me, is not a bandwagon guy. He doesn't need the latest, greatest, whatever. And it was actually interesting because, a long story short, it was the first interview I went to where a manager had almost gave me permission to be myself and said, don't go in there and pretend, she said, with any directors, don't pretend that you're somebody that you're not. Be yourself. If you're shy, be shy. If you're arrogant, be arrogant. If you're a jokester, be that. Whoever you are, be that, so that they can see you, because the good people will want to work with you. Next interview is David. I am shy when I first meet people. I allowed myself to not try to, hi, how are you, be this person. And I was quiet, and he kind of, had to keep the conversation going. Casting director told my agent I should have been more positive. And a week later, they said he's writing her a role. Audrey wasn't in the script. So he met me, and I feel like because I allowed myself to just truly be who I was, it was an amazing life lesson. He saw me and wrote me a role that then changed my life, that people remember and are moved by even now, so many years later.
What do you think? I know it's very dangerous to put words in other people's mouths, but I mean, David clearly saw something in you. I mean, that happened twice as well. I believe the character he created for you for Wild at Heart, in that sort of episode, that sort of vignette within the film, felt very bespoke to Sherilyn Fenn. What do you feel it was that David saw in you?
I, as you said, I mean, I wouldn't venture to, I don't know, I have no idea. But I know what he didn't see. He didn't see inauthenticity. He saw probably a child woman, somebody that was what Audrey was, just stepping into her power and figuring out who she was, and a lot of contradictions, I think. But somebody that wasn't afraid to show, that had an open heart and was always willing to show her heart. And yeah, and we'd have to ask David.
That's a fair point. One thing I've always been very curious about, I actually spoke to Mark Frost about this. What was it like being at the eye of the storm during that pop culture phenomena time? I remember very clearly walking into what we call a news agents in the UK. And you yourself were on the cover of the Radio Times, which in the UK is like being on the cover of Time and Newsweek in 1990. What was that like? What was it like being under such scrutiny and being part of this thing that was just the zeitgeist in those early 90s times?
I don't think that when you're in something like that, you're really aware of it. I was grateful and happy to be a part of something finally that people really liked and loved. I loved my character. I was surprised each script came, there was more for her to do. I loved her. I wore most of my own clothes. I just had a wonderful time doing her. It was a positive vibe on the set. Everyone was very happy and enjoying what we were doing. We went to do press in New York, maybe between the first and second season. That was when I realized it was bigger than I thought. In Los Angeles, you drive in your car, you don't, I don't go to, I'm not Hollywood girl. So I'm not reading press about me or going to places that necessarily I would feel that or be aware of it. I was not aware of it. When I was in New York City, I remember walking down the street with my manager and people were shouting Audrey. And at first I wasn't aware of it because I'm Sherilyn. And my manager was like, they're calling you. I'm like, what? And I looked and they're like, Audrey. And I was like, wow, that's trippy. And I remember that it was like somebody poured water over me. I'm a New York City street and someone's calling my character's name. So that was when I became aware of it. And for me, it was only positive. There was nothing negative about it. I wasn't feeling exploited in the show. I was feeling empowered. I was having a great time. It was a wonderful thing to be a part of.
And Audrey seems to continue to resonate with audiences. I see Audrey dolls and Audrey merchandising, official and otherwise, just to this day. And obviously, with the third season, with Twin Peaks: The Return, and the mystery around that character, what is it about Audrey that you think resonates with audiences? What makes her jump out so much?
Someone once at a signing, we answered questions and someone asked me that. And I discovered an answer that I wasn't aware of before. And because my first, answer is just, I have no idea. I don't know, but then as I was talking it through with this person that asked it, what I realized was that Audrey wants to be loved. Audrey wants to be accepted, and Audrey wants to be seen for who she is, and who doesn't? Everybody does.
Yeah, that's a very potent.
When somebody looks, or they can say, it's because she's sexy, or she's this, or she's that. Well, that lasts about that long, and then we carry on. So what made sense to me, the thing that makes the most sense, is that there's just a common ground that we all want to be seen and loved and heard and valued. And Audrey really had that. She had a lot of issues with her father, and she wanted love. She believed in love and wanted love, and who doesn't? So I think I think people that stop at just her looks or this or that, it's very vacant. It was never something that we worked on. Let's look this way, or let's do this thing to get this attention, ever. So it was more just, coming from the soul, this young person that, thought she was in love with this man, and thought that she would do anything to make it work. And thought, this is my knight in shining armor that's going to take me off into the sunset and take me away from my father. And, and I think we all have, again, that not only the desire to be loved and seen and everything, but the desire to love, and to have like a fairy tale story with a kind of a glamorous figure that comes into our life. So yeah, that's what I think.
I think that sense of yearning definitely resonates, I should say. I'm curious to know what your sort of relationship with was with your peers, not just in Twin Peaks, but your larger peers. I mean, I think there was a feeling that you were part of this almost 90s equivalent of what people called the Brat Pack in the 80s. Did you feel part of a larger community of sort of, you know, young talent, or did you feel kind of like you were your own nation state at that time?
No, I just, as I was in school, as growing up, as I am to this very day, I'm not a part of any group that way. I never was. It's weird when you go into places and people say hi, even though they don't know each other, because they're celebrities. It's so weird. Hi,
Hug.
whatever, you know. No, it wasn't that. I just, and I had no big desire to be around a bunch of actors. You know, the work is a gift, as my teacher taught me, you know, as he turned to me and said, you know, that horrible childhood, let me show you why it's a gift. And to show me what I could do through my work and how I could use it in a therapeutic way, and how I could explore things and learn and grow and give back. And because I do that in my work, I believe that's why I get some of the responses that I get. I mean, people have shared amazingly private stories of their heartache, of their pain, of their trying to kill themselves, of just all kinds of things. And I'm honored, I'm amazed, makes me a little nervous and sad at the pain that's out in the world. And I think Audrey showed her pain too, which is why people felt that they can, or still feel that they can share that way. I'm kind of an open book that way. I believe in emotional fluency and just being honest, and shit, life is hard and it's amazingly beautiful and fantastic. So, yeah.
If you could, I'm just thinking back to sort of that time, if you could go back in time and speak to your 23-year-old self, would you give yourself advice? Would you, or would you, what would that be if you would?
Yeah, well, actually, I was 24 when I played Audrey. I would tell myself that this is nothing. There's so much more going to happen later in your life, and just enjoy the ride right now, and don't take it all so seriously. It's like Helen Mirren said, she'd go back and tell herself to just say F it, F it, F it all, you know. Um, and to really value and even enjoy it more, just, you know, have fun with it. It didn't, I think at that point I thought, this is a step to something else, to something else, to something else, as we do when we're young. And then as we get older, we just realize, no, this is a beautiful moment. I'm happy to be in it. I'm going to enjoy, you know, all the time I'm here, instead of worrying about yesterday and tomorrow. Yeah, that's what I would say to myself. And I would say, and don't be afraid to do more of the roles that, you know, there were so many opinions. Don't do this, and you're going to be said to be that, and you can't do this, and we need to do that. And it just is all this, it's ridiculous. Sometimes I would pass on something I loved because somebody told me I shouldn't do it, instead of just listening to my instinct. Oh, this makes me happy, I want to play this character, you know, kind of thing. So, because they always, you know, they have an end game, and it's silly. It's a
Yeah.
waste of time.
I've always been very interested in the sort of I suppose, the social aspects of the business. And I'm just wondering what it's like when you join an ensemble. So, for example, you mentioned Friends earlier on, and you featured in an episode of Friends. How is it sort of plugging in to a pre-existing kind of production line? Is it difficult, or is it just you come in and you do your thing and you remain separate? How is that sort of guest appearance world?
Well, it really does depend on what you're stepping into and the tone that those people choose to set. When I did a show called Rude Awakening for 3 years and many guest stars came in, I was always tried to just be very open and loving, and, you know, celebrate that they're there to help support our show. it really depends on the show. Friends was okay. It was very fast because they had fired somebody. So where normally I would arrive on Monday and film Friday, I arrived on a Wednesday and filmed Friday. So it was just quick. Jennifer Aniston was a sweetheart. I mean, I think she was probably the warmest one who came and maybe we were in a costume fitting. I can't remember, but she was just, how are you? Just loving and genuinely a nice person, and made you feel like you were, part of it. And then my scenes were with Matthew, and he was great. But I'm not a sitcom girl with the audience and like it was weird in a way because you have to wait for them to stop laughing, and then it's just a different animal.
Very artificial aesthetic,
not
isn't
my
it?
cup of tea at all. Rude Awakening, we didn't have an audience. We didn't have to wait they would add laughs, but we didn't wait for laughs. So it was very different.
I was just wondering if you could just spend a couple of minutes just talking about your portrayal of Elizabeth Taylor. And did your own experiences with early fame inform any of your performance choices in that? Because I mean, there are some similarities there, or did it just feel like another day at the office from a how you got into the role?
No, I mean, I adore her. I'd always adored her. So it was a big deal. I did a lot of research looking for candid footage of her where she wasn't in an interview necessarily. And no, I couldn't have gone on my own life because she was like the princess from day one, and like this amazingly gorgeous creature from the time she was a baby. There was odd parallels with my own mother because my mother is that generation, and my mother was married 8 times and kept believing in love, and kind of, they don't date, they get married. They're so cute. But no, it was just the most important thing for me there was I had to keep reminding myself, don't be such a fangirl, and I want to find who the woman is, not the person that she presented in all different ways. Because sometimes she'd have an accent and then she wouldn't have an accent, and she would act very much like a princess, but then she'd drink men under the table, and when she was off camera she'd be cursing like a sailor. So the world didn't see the real Elizabeth. It was very much controlled by the studio and the images that went out and who you dated. So I was more interested in what she wore. Elizabeth didn't dress well. She was a very eclectic, crazy dresser. But when the studio dressed her, she always had to look a certain way. So she was it was a razor's edge to try to, because I couldn't play it with an accent, without an accent, the way she did in her life, because they would just say, I suck, So I had to find this middle ground where there's a little bit of an accent all the time, but she's with Mike Todd. She had no accent. She's with her first or second husband is English. She has the accent. Mike Todd, no accent. Richard Burton, accent. It was crazy.
Wow, what a complicated character.
It was the hardest role I've ever played, honestly, because we were shooting 6-day weeks. I played her 16 to like 70. It was just I would lay in bed and I could hear the facts of more pages coming in, of like, now something else is rewritten, and all these actors that are my husbands that have notes or questions. It was incredible.
Is that the most sort of submerged in a role that you ever felt?
On some level, yes. And that's, I had a philosophy teacher at the time, and he said, you're playing her, you're worried that you're playing Joan of Arc when you're actually playing like this broad who would drink men under the table, that you have to just pull back a little bit. But she was alive at the time, and she was an icon to me, and she was somebody that I looked up to, and I took great I had a lot of responsibility, I felt like, and I had a producer who was trying to rewrite things and make it more salacious and add more fat scenes, and I had my lawyer coming in, and I mean, it was crazy, and personal issues were coming up with my mother, and just a lot of stuff was coming up. I was really I had just had my son. I was still nursing him. I mean, he's one of my babies on my hip. So it was just every part of me was being kind of thrown into it, and I wasn't good at balancing it. You know, if you finish on Saturday night and then you work on Sunday morning, you have no time. You have no time for yourself. And it's the only time a film set got shut down because of me. 2 different times. One time I was doing my close-ups looking in the lens, and they're saying, you're looking in the lens. And I said, no, I'm not. And we start arguing. And the doctor said, it seems crazy. It's the only time it happened. The doctor said I had stress fatigue syndrome. He said, your body's going, but you're no longer even there.
Wow.
He said, they want me to patch you up and put you back in the game. And he would pull me from the set and give me 3 days off. I lost so much weight, like not meaning to. I was just dropping weight in there. And every costume is so important because it's from this moment and you know, in her life, and she wore this or she wore that. So they're readjusting. It was just crazy.
That sort of exhaustion and fatigue, though, I mean, that's certainly something that Taylor would have experienced herself back in that, you know, production line mentality that was occurring at the time. So as awful as it sounds, it kind of probably helped the performance in some ways, maybe.
It probably did. It was a trippy thing. It was a trippy thing to have gone through that.
Just to finish up, I'm just very mindful of your time, Sherilyn. Please feel free to not answer this next question if you don't want to, but I'd be getting told off by fans all over the internet if I didn't ask. We can't help but notice you've been posting pictures of Wisteria recently, and I was just wondering if there's any significance to that.
There isn't. I just read look, for the first time, I guess they're blossoming in Japan. I've never seen them. I just love trees.
They're very beautiful.
I love trees, and I saw this, I saw pictures. That's the most beautiful tree. I love trees. I posted it. And I've been moving houses, so I haven't really looked. And then I looked at Instagram, and then I saw these purple ones, and I posted, and there's like 80 comments. And I'm like, why is there 80 comments?
Well, what are these people talking about?
Right. And then I realized, oh, no connection whatsoever.
Glad to get that out there. And just before we finish up, I was just wondering if there's any, if you could just let listeners know how they can find you online, if there's any information about your work or a website or any kind of central Sherilyn Fenn resource or store or anything.
I have a site, www.sherilynfennxo.com. You know, Jemmy, I do Zoom dates with people and whatnot, and Cameo, different things. And my blog, I have to get back to my blog, which I've posted many stories, but not recently. It's called Postcards from the Ledge. And yeah, that's about it.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for your time, Sherilyn. This has been a huge thrill. And just on behalf of all of the fans out there and all of the PodSyndicate who are huge fans of your work, just all the best to you and yours. And I'm glad the move's gone well, and best wishes to you in the future.
And to you. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thanks so much.